I am an INTJ on the internet, and today I am continuing to look at and explore socionics through various tests in order to sort of cross-verify results. It is a system that I am not the most familiar with. I, of course, have seen some materials related to socionics. Now, socionics is very interesting because it is a derivative of the original 4/8 Jungian cognitive functions, expanded upon by a Lithuanian economist, sociologist, psychologist. She took several other different theories and fused it with Jung's work. She later went back and adopted some of the Myers-Briggs language and tried to infuse that back into the system as well. So it's kind of like both parallel thinking and conjoined thinking at the same time. It's quite interesting, the interaction between socionics and MBTI. And in fact, I kind of want to go over that a little bit here. So socionics versus MBTI is kind of what I'm examining in this series of tests that I'm taking. So they both describe 16 types, but they were built for different questions. MBTI focuses on preferences and a stack of cognitive functions to explain how an individual tends to think and decide. Yeah, I like that approach. Socionics focuses on information elements and interaction, how two types will likely communicate, cooperate, or clash. I think that's a very interesting question to tackle as well. So this is why I think you need to look at multiple systems to provide different viewpoints or purposes when examining your own identity, your own personality, is because these different systems focus on different things. They offer different conclusions about who you are that you can then take and utilize as tools in order to improve your own weaknesses or deficiencies and just live a better life in general. So in MBTI, the 4-letter code and function stack, for example, in ENTP, NETI, FESI give a quick vocabulary for strengths and blind spots. In socionics, the emphasis is on how information flows between people. The emphasis produces a relational map called intertype relations. Interesting. I don't know if I ever am going to get into all of that. The goals differ, the labels won't always map. They're similar, but they don't always directly map over. I believe within MBTI, I'm definitely an INTJ. Within socionics, it might be a little bit more up for debates. I do think the INTJ personality type does fit me better within the context of MBTI than INTP does, but according to Socionics, what Socionics is picking up on that MBTI is lacking, Socionics has picked up on my, what they call a demonstrative function. So internal thinking or logic processes, I use the process of logic to demonstrate my patterns of thought so I can justify my conclusions. I'm very much focused on showing people how I come to my conclusions through a process that can be sort of like vetted and verified. Any cross-mapping is approximate and not exact. Which system should you use? If you want a fast self-descriptor for coaching and coaching or journaling, MBTI is a great start. Yeah, sure. Practical predictions for teams hiring and relations. Okay, you're giving yourself a little bit too much credence, Socionics. I don't know about that. Usually gives clearer guidance. I think Socionics tends to be more specific than MBTI, but what I have found with some of the descriptions involved in Socionics, it seems to come from a more pessimistic viewpoint. So a lot of the language used often describes people almost in kind of like a sad state. Like it doesn't leave enough optimism for self-improvement. Whereas MBTI is usually just a more adaptable system for growth. Like it has a more optimistic language and output as far as how to interpret moving towards strengths or developing your weaknesses towards strengths, which I appreciate because I'm more on the optimistic growth side of things. Yeah, some of the descriptions in Socionics just is like pessimistic and sad and tragic. So Socionics, Eastern Europe, 1940s in the US, 1970s, yeah. Focus information elements, intertype relationships, cognitive function stacks, and preferences. I think these can be complementary. I don't like the intertype relational model because it seems to be commenting upon what is a good match for you, or who are the people you're going to best interact with. And I don't like that kind of prescriptiveness. I think you should focus on the individual. And then the individual should work within themselves to interrelate to other people, using that information and knowledge about themselves and others. Because I think any relationship with any other psychological type, it can be built through understanding and through communication. So you should not limit your compatibility with other people by using a prescriptive model to tell you who you will best interact with. I think that's wrong. And that's my value judgment. And that's why I prefer MBTI, because it focuses on the individual rather than the intertype. Makes sense. Type structure, 16 types, 16 types. Yep, we got that. Use cases, communication, relationship, career mapping, self-description, personal insight, which can be used for communication and relationships. Accuracy debate. Claim deeper interpersonal predictions, widely recognized, simpler to learn. I do agree. MBTI is a little bit simpler to learn on the surface, but once you get into it, it has certain levels of complexity that are not easily expressed when you're first introduced to MBTI. Okay, so we're going to take the test. Research grade, Socionics assessment, advanced Socionics, and cognitive function test. Here we go. We are going to have to accept that my head is going to be in the way of strongly agree. As long as we can just recognize that it's a Likert scale represented in these boxes here. Strongly disagree to strongly agree with neutral in the middle. Okay, let's get to it. I feel energized by interacting with people and external activities. I do not. I focus on possibilities and patterns more than concrete facts. Yeah, I have a favoritism. I make decisions by weighing objective logic over personal values. So INTJ, if you recall, is introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, extroverted sensing. My decision making is between those two functions in the middle, the extroverted thinking and introverted feeling. Objective logic is extroverted thinking. Personal values is introverted feeling. I tend to baby my introverted feeling because that is the source of all meaning and purpose within the world for me. However, whenever I'm being a pragmatist within the world, I tend to ultimately make my decisions based on objective logic. But usually it's the personal values will override it. And then I rationalize my personal values using my extroverted thinking. So I'm going to disagree. It's really hard to say that. I like clear plans and to decide early rather than keeping my options open. I do like clear plans, but I'm fairly flexible around other people if they need to make changes to the plan. I just need communication. That is an accommodation that I have made to my own preferences. I prefer quiet time alone to process my thoughts. I agree, I do. I prefer practical details and step-by-step instructions. Practical details, yes. Step-by-step instructions, I could, whatever. I mean, it's useful in some respects, but sometimes I just need to have the information, like the details, and I just need to get in there myself, and I just need to like work with it, you know? And come up with my own process for it. I'm so against step-by-step. It kind of aggravates me sometimes, but I think I have to agree because they're practical. Maintaining harmony and considering people's feelings guides my choices. Let me say this, not as the dominant thing. It is a secondary concern. I prefer flexibility and adapting as I go instead of rigid schedules. I prefer flexibility so that I can set my own schedule. When solving problems, I like to talk through ideas out loud. I do. Abstract concepts and big picture ideas excite me. They do. I appreciate candid, direct feedback, even if it feels blunt. Yes, I do. because I want the information. Checklists, deadlines, and structure help me do my best work. Deadlines, yes. Structure, yes. Checklists, yeah, but I don't want to be chained down by these things. But they're helpful. If they're like tools that I have flexibility to use or disregard, it's fine. But if I am mandated to use a checklist and go through, it becomes a little bit harder. I need flexibility within the tools that I use to do the work. I tend to reflect before speaking and keep discussions concise. Yeah. I notice concrete realities and what's happening here and now. I do. Do I always? No. No, I mean, if I'm focused on something else that isn't the reality of what's happening now, then I'm not going to notice it. You know, if my attention is elsewhere. But if I'm in a place where I'm focusing on the surroundings around me, I'm in it. You know? So I'll agree with that. Empathy and encouragement are more important than strict correctness. If you're seeing the whole person and you're caring about their evolution as a person, their growth path as an individual, if you're caring about that and you want to encourage and empower that, you should care about correctness. Correctness, weird kind of term, because I don't mean in a pedantic way where you're ridiculing their use of word choice or specific grammar within their practical speech. I don't think you should be pedantic. However, if there is an issue that this person is having and you have insight into that, if you have observation, I think you should be able to, if you care about them, speak with them in a candid fashion and offer that kind of direction and feedback, and they can take it or leave it. They can take it with a grain of salt or not, whatever, but if they think that offering that kind of notion of correctness is going to be helpful to them, then they can take that on and they can adjust their own behavior as they see fit. So it depends on how you're interpreting this question, because this could be FETI, and it probably is, but I'm taking it in terms of FE, FI, and TE, and a bit of NI. Because I'm using all of my functions to circumnavigate the extroverted feeling, is basically what's happening with this question. So I'm going to disagree. I like to explore and keep things open-ended until the last responsible moment. Extroverted intuition oftentimes will keep things open past the last responsible moment, because they don't necessarily have good boundaries around that until they have kind of recognized that and built it into the development of their function. I like to stop far ahead of the last responsible moment. So I'll say disagree. I actively seek out group activities and lively environments. I don't mind being around it, but I just don't want to have to participate in it. And the more that you're in that environment, the more people will try to draw you into it. And it's like, I'm just here to like hang and chill. Y'all do your thing, and I'm going to be joyously observing you. I enjoy exploring hypothetical scenarios and what if questions. Yeah, I do. I prioritize fairness by applying consistent criteria to everyone. No. I'm very subjective. I try to be fair, but in my fairness, I am considering subjective realities rather than applying one consistent criteria, which actually ends up being less fair, in my opinion. I prefer having my day scheduled rather than spontaneous. Yeah, but I'm usually making my own schedule. I prefer to observe first before engaging with a group. I trust tried and true methods more than novel approaches. No, I think I tend to favor novel approaches because I'm always looking for improvement, right? But if you seek to try out a novel approach, you better have good justification for it. And you better have follow through that is able to match or exceed the tried and true method that you are replacing. So you have to be responsible with your novel approaches, but I am very open to it. I value preserving relationships over being technically right. That I would say yes. I don't care about being technically right. I care about being functionally valuable. So competence is important to me, But I don't have to be correct. I don't have to win an argument the way introverted thinking does. I just have to be competent and functional within reality. But I think I'm still going to value preserving like independent one-to-one relationships of the people I care about. I feel like I'm still going to care about that more because it's more rare for me to have those deep connections and relationships. So I'm going to want to protect and preserve those as much as possible at the expense of something like efficiency or efficacy, which I have much more ability to enact, to be successful in my projects and stuff like that comes easier to me than connecting with people and initiating and maintaining these relationships. So I'm putting a higher value on the relationships because it's more rare, it's more scarce of a resource for me. I feel constrained by strict plans and prefer to go with the flow. I actually do agree with that. Other people's strict plans, I feel like it restricts my freedom. I need to be able to set my own agenda and make my own plans. I still have structure, I exude structure, but it tends to have to be my own structure. Meeting new people frequently feels natural and energizing. No, it's hard for me. It's not natural. I quickly connect patterns across different topics. I think so. It's intuition in general. Extroverted intuition is better about this. They're better at associative because their reach is wider. They have more topics that they're connecting, whereas the introverted intuition patterning can reach across different topics, but they have to be within our awareness. And our awareness tends to be a little bit more limited than extroverted intuition. But I do agree with this. I prefer decisions that optimize outcomes even if they feel impersonal. Yeah, I mean, you don't need every solution to feel personal. In fact, if a solution to a problem feels too personal, it can be really off-putting. It's like, yeah, I don't want you to know that much about me. So sometimes these algorithms, this synthetic sort of artificial intelligence form of being personal with you and your information is actually really off-putting. I like to close decisions and move on rather than keep reconsidering. Yeah, I can be pretty decisive, but it's like I have to reach a point of decision where I'm making that choice. So I will do a fair amount of like passive information gathering or research, like direct targeted research. And then I will come to a point of feasibility of action where it's like, now I have the information I need. It's time to lock in. It's time to move forward. And that's when things get done. Deep one-on-one conversations are more comfortable than group chats. Yeah, I like having a deep one-on-one conversation. Hit me up sometime. I notice and remember specific facts and details from my surroundings. This is something I wish I could improve, but I think my brain is just not built for it. It doesn't have the retention, it doesn't move things into long-term storage at all. So it's like, okay, I'm really only getting the salient details or the details that I'm focusing upon. Everything is just kind of like impressionistic and it's kind of conflated, all of these experiences conflated together to form that centralized pattern. I gauge choices based on their impact on the people involved. I do, but it's difficult determining who is involved, who are the stakeholders. Part of the battle is figuring out who is directly impacted by the choices you're going to be making. Being an introvert, a lot of the choices that I make are mostly concerning myself because I don't want to infringe upon other people's agency and their ability to act. So I'm not making choices on behalf of other people. That's just not who I am. So oftentimes the people being impacted by my choices are me. And if you're being impacted, I do need to know that. So obviously, if I have made a choice that has impacted you, please tell me. That feedback is very helpful. I might be able to consider in the future how to better approach a decision I make if I know that someone is being impacted by it. So I am actually going to agree with this awareness is the problem. I enjoy keeping options open and exploring alternatives over time. If I have decided I need to act, that's when I'm closing down the alternative machine. I like doing things over time, though. I like giving myself the freedom to explore something. Everything doesn't have to be like dot, 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 dot. You know, like an ENTJ would probably be much more pushing. I do prefer taking more time and building something over time. I prefer active, fast-paced settings to calm private spaces. No. I enjoy theoretical discussions even without immediate application. I do. I find them very fascinating. Let's have a deep one-on-one conversation about theoretical topics, about speculation and what ifs and various hypothetical situations. Yeah. I do like things to have application though. I argue from principles and criteria more than from personal values. So this is like TI versus FI. I'm more personal values. I feel comfortable when plans are decided well in advance. The plan is there and it's fine. I can just leave it and I don't have to keep up with it. I don't have to check in and communicate constantly. It's like this has already been decided. So now I just have to wait for time to catch up with the meeting that has been scheduled. I might forget about the meeting, honestly, because it's been decided too well in advance. So I will need some kind of like calendar notification to tell me that a meeting is happening for sure. Yeah. I often need downtime alone to recharge after socializing. For me, it's post-processing because I'm not able to operate as fast in the moment. So a lot of the stuff I've taken in or the interactions I've had, I haven't been able to fully go over and sort of integrate that into my understanding. And so after socializing with other people, I do need to be alone so I can process the events that just happened. I trust what I can verify through direct experience. This statement is a little odd, right? Because if you have verified something through direct experience, would you not trust it? This is just like a statement of fact, right? Like, why wouldn't you trust something you have verified through direct experience? Why would you doubt your own direct experience? Not only did you have the direct experience, you were able to verify something with that experience. Why wouldn't you trust that? Yeah, I may adjust decisions to avoid hurting someone's feelings. Yes, but I have to know about someone's feelings first. So it doesn't always happen, but I would prefer to avoid hurting someone's feelings. It also depends on the way in which the feelings are hurt, you know? Like what's more important? Because what if the outcome of the decision is more important than someone's feelings? It's not necessarily the main criteria, but it's what's being put in focus for this question, which makes it harder to answer. Because what if someone's feelings are just like, what if it's just like a state of being and they can get over it? But the implication of the decision that has been made is long lasting and important. What if that's the case? Am I going to disagree? I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I'll be neutral. I prefer spontaneous changes to sticking to a fixed plan. I'll disagree with that. I naturally initiate conversations with strangers. No, I do not. Not naturally. I have to force myself. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Especially if it's someone I'm interested in. I'm like, okay, come on, you gotta buck up. You gotta start something with this person so that you can get to know them. You can establish this connection. So maybe there can be a relationship here. I like connecting disparate ideas into a unified concept. I do. Sometimes ideas need to stay disparate. They can just like, no, that needs to be over here. That needs to be over here. And never the two shall meet, you know, but I do enjoy a good unified concept. I enjoy a good pattern, but you gotta recognize when nuance is needed, when complexity should be like fully envisioned. I prefer objective benchmarks to evaluate performance. I do, especially when it comes to like salary. Did you meet this benchmark? Okay, let's give you a 3% raise or whatever to keep up with inflation. I don't necessarily love subjectivity, because what if a manager just doesn't like you? I quickly converge on a decision rather than keep researching forever. The problem is quickly versus researching forever. So it's a bit of a tough question, right? Because you're adding these qualifiers that make it a little more difficult to answer the question. I do not necessarily quickly converge on a decision. I do not keep researching forever. Am I more of a decision person or more of a researcher? Compared to other people, probably more of a researcher. I'm more cautious, but I can flip into decision-making mode if I want to. So I'm gonna be neutral on this one. I would rather observe a lively group than be the center of it. Absolutely. This is what I said earlier. I don't want to participate. I value realism and practical steps over speculation. I like both. Do both, be both. I will often speculate. You know, it's fun. It's really enjoyable for me. It has a lot of nuance to speculation and the probabilities and possibilities of things that might happen or might never happen. But then, whenever you want to see that within reality, you need to be realistic about the world that you're faced with and the practical steps to achieve certain goals. Do I value it over speculation? Probably not, because I like speculating. I consider interpersonal harmony a top priority in decision making. I think it's important, but it's not top priority for me. I like the freedom to pivot, even late in the process. I do like the freedom to pivot. I mean, I think if you determine that something is not going to work out you need to pivot. You need to pivot to prevent failure. Oh, here we are. Okay. I don't know if you can see my type. We've now reached the end of the test. You are LII, the analyst, the MBTI INTP equivalent. A 33% match? That's not good. That's a terrible match. What are you talking about? I would never call myself this type based on 33% accuracy. Are you freaking kidding me? This test is terrible. 33%? Where's the other 67? Was the 67 just disparate across all the other types? What's going on? Was it just diffused? Where's my 67%? TI, okay, so it's like INTP. Okay, sure. Well, I don't agree with this, but we're going to look into it because we'll give something a fair shake. I'm just like, this is not encouraging. That's not the type of match that I would put stock in. Process abstract versus concrete information, clear pattern in your decision making, logic versus values, orientation. Nope, okay. Bummer. This is not worth $12.99 or originally $19.99. Why? Because I think it's wrong. Listen, 33% is not reliable. I mean, even if it is the majority, it's not reliable. So I can't take this seriously. But this is calling me an INTP within the Myers-Briggs typology. But we do know that Socionics and MBTI is not a complete one-for-one. I wasn't the biggest fan of the questions that this test was asking either. I think it's fascinating because, you know, my partner is an INTP. Because I have this deep relationship with an INTP, a lot of things we share with each other is in the realm of logic and ideation. So it makes more sense that I would be more highly attuned to introverted thinking and extroverted intuition, and that I like these things. I have an optimism or preference for them, but I don't think it's an accurate interpretation of what I'm actually doing with my processes. So yeah, I mean, if you're watching this and you're getting into socionics, just be very careful with the tests that you take. In the realm of socionics, I don't think this is the most accurate, so I don't think this is the one you would want to go to. However, you could take it just to develop your questioning skills. You could take it as a cross-reference verification of other tests, just to get the vibe of it, to feel like, do I have confidence in this specific test? And this is why you don't always just want to take one test. You want to take multiple different versions of a test because the biases baked into the test from the person who wrote the test, they matter. Your own biases, how you enter into the test, they matter. They will determine the results. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that wraps it up for this test. It doesn't get a pass from me, but that's fine. Take it if you want. As always, I hope you have a great day, even if that day finds you questioning a 33% match.